What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It's time for a recap of our Big 12 predictions. Also, of course, going to give you the conference championship game prediction. In the last year of Texas and Oklahoma being in the Big 12, first year of UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU, and the last year before we get Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. So just a crazy conference realignment, of course. The Big 12 going to look much different next year, but we'll see what happens here in the final year of Texas and Oklahoma. And remember, we've gone through and done individual videos, team videos, every single team in the Power 5. We've just got a couple teams left, but I've done all the Big 12 teams, giving you my predictions, and went much more in-depth in those videos if you want to see really what I think about each team. But I'll quickly recap and show you the standings here, and then get to the conference championship game. So at the bottom, we got Houston, West Virginia, BYU, and Cincinnati. I think these teams likely finish at the bottom of this conference. Now, the news about Hunter Dekkers does change some things for me. I'm showing you the standings based off of the predictions that I've been doing all summer, and when we first made the predictions, obviously didn't have that information. And so I think Iowa State probably winds up in this group, and maybe Houston or West Virginia can get a little bit higher in the standings here. And probably a win for Cincinnati. I talked about that in the Cincinnati video. I'd probably change that pick now and say that they're going to beat Iowa State and get at least one conference win. But I do have the Bearcats at the bottom, BYU just ahead of them, then West Virginia and Houston. But I'm telling you, the Big 12, there are no bad teams. I realize I have Cincinnati at 2-10, and that sounds awful, but there are no bad teams in this conference. And it would not shock me if we saw one of these four teams perhaps finish in the top half of the conference, because I think it's really a wide open race, a lot of parity. I do think one team is kind of above everyone else, which we'll get to, and you probably already know who that is. But yeah, Houston's got a lot of weapons on offense. This could be a good Houston team. West Virginia's got a really good offensive line. Can that carry them to a better season? So yes, I've got these teams at the bottom because someone has to be at the bottom. But if you're a fan of one of these teams, I would still be optimistic about this season. I think there's a chance that any of these teams, again, could surprise. So let's go to our next teams again. There's Iowa State. I'd probably drop them down at least a couple of games without Hunter Dekkers at quarterback. He was actually pretty solid for them last season. And maybe he does play. I mean, it doesn't look like it. He's not going through fall camp. And I mean, I don't see him playing this year, but I guess you never know. But yeah, I've got the Cyclones there, 6-6 overall. But like I said, probably would want to lower that a little bit now. Then we've got Oklahoma State just ahead of them at 4-5 in the conference as well, 7-5 overall. Could be a sneaky good team this year. A lot of transfers out, but a lot of transfers in. I think Mike Gundy is still a really solid coach, and if he can get everything together here, you know, Alan Bowman coming back to Oklahoma State, coming back to the Big 12 and coming to Oklahoma State is a really interesting storyline that I don't think anyone's really talking about. But yeah, this could be a good team. We'll see. I've got them at 7-5. I think they have a decent season. Ahead of them, we've got Baylor, kind of the same story, 7-5, 5-4 in the conference. So this is a team that I can't remember if it was Phil Steele or Athlon, one of those preseason magazines was actually really high on Baylor. I'm not super high on them. When you really dig into the roster, they do still have some areas of concern. But they've got enough pieces to have, I think, a bounce back year, or have a decent year, I should say, and get to 7-5. Definitely, I think, a team that gets to a bowl game. Ahead of them, all right, we're getting to the teams now. I think the top 7 teams all have a real shot at winning the Big 12, or at least getting to the Big 12 championship, and that starts with UCF. I know a lot of people are going to disagree here, but if you look at this roster, they've got talent, and they've got a lot of experience, a lot of returning production. There are a lot of things that you look at for teams that can have really good seasons, and I think UCF has a lot of that. If John Rice Plumlee can get a little bit more consistent throwing the football, we know he's a great runner, but if he can get a little bit more consistent, and just this team overall in the passing game, because they have weapons at wide receiver, I'm telling you, UCF could really surprise, and I think they could make a run to the Big 12 championship. And I think it's the same thing with Kansas, and Jalen Daniels coming back from that injury. They have a lot of experience coming back. Maybe not quite as much talent as UCF, but maybe a little bit more experience. Just a ton of production coming back. I had the head-to-head matchup between these two going to Kansas. I believe the game was at Kansas, and that was kind of the tiebreaker there. So yes, I do have Kansas just ahead of UCF, but same records overall. And those are my two sleeper teams. If a team is going to come kind of out of nowhere and get to the Big 12 championship, I think it's going to be Kansas or UCF. So let's go to the top 5 now. I've got Texas Tech at number 5. I think they're going to have a really good season. 6-3 in the conference, 8-4 overall with that one loss coming to Oregon. This is another team that has a lot of production coming back. They have a decent amount of talent on this roster as well. I think they're definitely going to finish in that top 5 of the Big 12. Watch out for the Red Raiders. And again, a team that could possibly surprise and get to the Big 12 championship. TCU just ahead of them, tied at 6-3. I think I had them winning the head-to-head. 9-3 overall. I think TCU drops off a little bit from where they were last year, but I still think they have a really good year. Still a top 25 team. A lot of pieces are gone, but a lot of pieces are coming back. Chandler Morris at quarterback, who actually won the starting job ahead of Max Duggan last year before he got injured. And a lot of pieces just throughout this team. So transfers coming in that are going to help them. I think TCU doesn't go anywhere. I think they have another good season. Oklahoma also at 9-3, 6-3 in the conference. I think the Sooners bounce back from where they were last year. They have the roster on paper to probably be the second best team in the Big 12. But we just saw a lot of issues with their defense last year, and I don't know if they're going to be able to fix that in one off season. Maybe they can. They've definitely added a lot up front on the defensive line, and their pass rush should be really, really good. And maybe that's enough to completely turn the whole defense around, and maybe they go 10-2 or 11-1. But I'm a little hesitant on the Sooners. I've got them at 9-3, but still a good season. I've got Kansas State also at 9-3, 7-2 in the conference. I did have them getting upset against Missouri, and that's why you see the 3 losses, even though I only have them with 2 conference losses. Schedule sets up pretty well for them. A lot of production coming back. Maybe the best coached team in the Big 12, and we've seen them get a lot out of a little as far as talent. I think Kansas State's going to once again be right there in the Big 12 championship game. This, again, is the team that won the Big 12 last year. Remember that. But Texas, I think, is clearly the best team. On paper, I'll tell you what, on paper, Texas should go 12-0. They really should. I think, or at least 11-1. Of course, you got the matchup with Alabama. But on paper, they are clearly better than everyone else in the Big 12. But we just have not seen them be able to take advantage of that. We haven't seen the mental toughness of this team be able to put teams away and be able to focus in games where they're favored. You know, a lot of different things have gone against them, but talent-wise and on paper, this is the best team in the Big 12. And so it wouldn't shock me if they ran the table in the conference, but until I see them do that, I'm going to say a couple teams catch them. They go 7-2 and 10-2 overall. All right, so that means we've got Kansas State and Texas in the Big 12 championship game. Should be a hard-fought matchup here. Texas obviously has a big advantage in talent. Kansas State probably has an advantage in toughness and you know, all those intangibles that they always have. And so I think that leads to a very good game. But I think Texas is just too good. Too much talent, too much offense. This offense is going to be really tough to stop. And I've got the Longhorns winning the Big 12 championship. It would not shock me to see them even go 11-1 and win the Big 12 and possibly even sneak into the college football playoff. They have the roster to do it. But again, I'm not going to get too high on the Longhorns. I've made that mistake in the past. And I'm going to say they lose a couple of games. But I do still have them winning the Big 12 championship. I'd love to get your thoughts on my predictions. And, of course, give me your predictions on the Big 12 down in the comments below.